Okay, I am really excited because we have an internet friend joining us today and now it's like it's real life, right? I mean, I guess we do that every week, but we're talking about a subject that Katie and I talk about literally every day, and we talk about it on pretty much every other channel except the podcast. So I'm
And it's
really
butts.
excited. Oh my God. You go there every time. No, it's art licensing, and we have a really special guest. Do you want to introduce yourself, Krissy?
Yeah, I'm Krissy Mast, and I am an illustrator, and I run an art licensing business, and I love it.
I love that.
Yes.
Very, very sweet and short and sweet. So you actually had a different business before
I
this,
did.
though. Yeah, let's go back there just
Give
for
us
like
the
a hot
scoop.
sec.
Yes. So I went to school for design, graduated, moved to New York City, was an art director in pharmaceutical advertising.
Fun.
Dream job, guys. So I just started an Etsy business on the side, and it was like kind of like the heyday of Etsy, and I just kind of fell into weddings because it's easy and
Every graphic designer can relate to that.
Yeah.
Around the same
It's
age.
a rite of passage. Absolutely.
So I just like started this little Etsy shop. I did like guest book alternatives, and it really took off. And so after a couple years of doing that, I left my full-time job and did that full time. That was Miss Designberry. I ran that business for like 12 years.
Wow.
And then I grew it to $1 million a year in revenue.
Wow.
And it was just me, and it was a lot. I had a lot of employees, and then COVID hit, and you can imagine it was like really stressful.
Yeah.
And I kind of just realized, like, I kind of took a step back and was like, I have two options. I can just like muscle my way through this, get through it, and like try to keep this business going. And then I was like, or option two is just kind of be like, I think I'm ready for a change. Let's scrap this and move on. And I did it. And I just said, like, I think I'm ready for something else. I bought an iPad, started taking Procreate lessons on Skillshare. That's it.
And here you are.
What a badass.
Yeah. Okay. So the listeners can't see that Katie, when you said $1 million in revenue, Katie was like having a party. She was like, snap. I mean,
I did one of those
dropping the
sassy
mic.
snaps.
Yeah, she did. Okay. So that caught us up to like 2020. But then since then, you've made art licensing your full-time job with, what did you say, 4 kids at home?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So 2020, I got the iPad. I started just like taking a bunch of Procreate classes on Skillshare. I started just posting to Instagram just to like get my art out there. And in 2022, so about like exactly like 2 years ago from now, like it was February 2022 is when I first started pitching to art licensing clients. I took some classes like Stacy Bloomfield, and I did some other little like I did a bunch of Liz Kohler Brown's classes, and I felt like I was at a place where I could just start pitching. And so I did. And actually it was funny because right around the time I started pitching, someone from the TJX brand reached out to me. They found me on Instagram. And so like it just kind of all happened at once. And I just started going from there. And my first couple deals were like fabric design deals, which was really great because it kind of forced me to design in collections. And so I made a whole bunch of art really quickly for these fabric deals. And that really gave me confidence to kind of just keep going. And I think my past business had taught me so much about just putting it out there and just like continuing moving forward that I didn't have a lot of like fear of rejection. So I just pitched and pitched and pitched and pitched like over 125 companies / people in that first year. And, you know, maybe 10% of them came through, and that's actually a lot of work.
10% is actually humongous.
Yeah, it was a lot
like
of
a really
clients.
good, that's a really good conversion.
Great conversion.
Yeah. Okay. So since then, you've also created a Facebook group, and you're like making me want to be on Facebook, which like feels icky to say, but can you talk about that too? Because not only have you built your own business, but you've built it with a sense of community as well, so that other people can learn and connect with each other. And I kind of thought that Facebook was dead. Like I had fully thrown in the towel, but then I saw you share about your group and I was like, oh, I wonder what this is about. And I saw it and I'm watching it grow and I'm seeing like so many great questions. So yeah, I want to hear about that as well, because I think both of those are really important.
So I'm with you. Like if it wasn't for Facebook groups, I would not be on Facebook. Like,
yeah.
I just need my art groups and my childcare group, and that's what I need. But so I had started getting like a little community of other surface pattern designers I had met, and we had like WhatsApp groups and stuff. And I was like, guys, like I'm just gonna make a Facebook group, and then just invited like my friends. And I literally don't know how, but it just started. It was like 10 people, then it was like 50 people. And then all of a sudden it was like 50 people a day started joining. And I think it's because I was also active in other surface design and artist Facebook groups. So I think people probably would see that I had a group as well. But yeah, it just snowballs, and it's really great. It's such a good resource. Like for me, I love it because like I can just ask people like, have you worked with this client before? Or like, they're asking for this kind of file and I don't know how this works, or just anything like silliest questions or super technical questions or whatever it is. But I also just love it because it's just like a lot of people just starting out, and to feel like there's people out there who can support you and help you and you're not totally by yourself, I think makes a really big difference.
I feel like Facebook has no filter. So like people really, so we have like a neighborhood Facebook group, I guess. I don't know. It pops up anytime I go on for Marketplace, and the comments are like so unhinged. I feel like people are just like, we're going to put it all out there. And they really do. Like they do not hold back. And that can be
I
a
had to
really
turn
good
off
thing.
my next door notifications.
Yes.
Oh, I can't.
That's like what it is.
Whoa.
Yeah. But imagine that in like the licensing space where nobody is gatekeeping, everyone's being honest, maybe sometimes a little too honest, but still honest.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool to be able to create a space like that and connect with people. So what's the name of it if people want to find it and join it?
It's just called Surface Pattern Designers and Illustrators. There's also a link to it on my website. So if you can't find it on Facebook for some reason, if you go to my website, it's linked on there too.
Amazing. It seems like you're really prolific in the amount of work you create. Like it seems like you're always sharing new work. So I'm curious, is that strategic and like you're not actually creating that work every day and you're like using your business hat for that, or are you a really prolific creator and share it really strategically like that?
It's both. I do work really fast.
Okay.
I definitely I don't make new work every day, even though I try and share every day. Like I'd say my Instagram is probably 50% sharing art that was from a year or two ago, and then 50% new art. And I usually try and kind of say like if it's new, because like my clients might want to know like, oh, this is a new piece, like maybe you haven't seen it. But I also work really fast. And like when I was kind of figuring out my style in my illustration work, I kind of wanted it to be something that wasn't going to be like, I'm not like the most detail oriented person. I like to work fast, and then like it's 90% good and I'm like, okay, that's good, I can fix it later.
So Katie really is not like that.
That works for me. So,
but
like,
your work has so many great details in it.
Yeah,
so it's funny that you say that, because I love like finding the special little hidden Easter eggs in your work. And yeah, it's funny to me that you work that way, because it looks very refined and detailed to me.
Thank you. Yeah, so I do work fast though. Like a lot of times, like I'll try and do like one new piece of art like a couple times a week when my kids go to bed. And I'm like, okay, I have 2 hours, so whatever I do in 2 hours, like I'm finishing it and I'm going to upload it to my portfolio. And I kind of just try and like limit myself so that I just get it done.
That's a really inspiring way to come at it.
And it helps me too, because I'm like, it just kind of helps me limit, like, okay, like let's just think of a quick idea. Sometimes it's like I'll just look for what Instagram challenges are going on, or I'll look for what my agents are like sharing. I'll look for there's lots of places I can look for inspiration. I just pick something and I'm like, okay, let's just make a piece of art with this.
So you don't have like a list 20 miles long of like all the ideas?
I do have an idea list.
Okay, you also have that.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait,
in my notes,
should I throw it out? Maybe I should just throw it out and start over. Okay, I need to like digest all that. That's amazing.
So helpful to have that mindset when you're coming at art licensing, because a lot of us, especially if we have like a traditional design school background, at least in my design school, it was so intense about the thumbnailing process and the planning, and we spent way more time planning than producing the art. And you have to really shift that way of approaching your art when you go into licensing, because now time is money, more so than in any other field of art making that I've found. And if I make X amount of pieces, then I have more chances to sell them. So the faster you get and the quicker you're able to make decisions and commit, the more rewards you're going to see. So you've definitely seen that in your business, Krissy, and that's a superpower for sure.
Yes. And I've also learned, like, just because I'm not like obsessed in love with a piece of art does not mean it doesn't have value and someone's not going to license it. Because like so often stuff that gets picked up, I'm like, oh, really? Okay. But whatever. Like, I don't care.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of dance with your ego, I guess, a little bit in art licensing as well. And Alana and I have been talking about this recently because we're now collaborating on a portfolio together. And Alana's like talking about ditching all the stuff she's ever done before because it doesn't feel good to her. And I'm in the background like, wait, but money also. And like, just because like I totally get wanting to lead with your voice and stuff you feel good about. But licensing is about also having those pieces that sell through, that you're like, as Jessica Hish says, some for show, some for dough. And you've
It's
got
true, though.
something there in the backlogs that's going to sell, even if you're like, nah.
I think you also like you found, or I don't like saying found your style, but you like leaned into your style. It seems like from the beginning, like you knew who you were as an artist, even though you said like you've kind of identified what your style was. Can we talk about that though? Because I feel like, and one of the things I love about licensing is that your portfolio does not have to be cohesive. Like it's a great asset if it is. But one of the fun things is that if you can create a mass amount of work, you do have even more opportunities. And so you have so much room to experiment. And so some of the reasons I want to get rid of some of the pieces in my portfolio are because I just like feel like I forced it or I don't love it. And I mean, I get the like the devil and the angel, like you want to be somewhere in the middle. But how did you kind of, there's a balance. But how did you, what steps did you take? What helped reinforce that you felt good about your style and that it was truly yours and you could claim it?
So from the beginning, that was like the thing I had the most anxiety about, because my past business was like, it was a lot of couple portraiture. It was this very like specific style, vector, Adobe Illustrator. And that was not really like any style that was particular to me. It was just kind of something that had evolved and happened. So when I was like, I'm going to start this new career, I want to start using Procreate, I really just was like, I'm going to try and just stay as close to like my natural, like if someone was like handing me a pencil and was like, draw a dog, like before I even thought about anything, like how would I just draw it if I had 30 seconds to draw the dog?
Mine would look awful.
Mine also doesn't look that good. But like just like the kind of like the way like the shapes you gravitate towards, the line work you gravitate towards, I try to just stay as close to that as possible. So basically to make it as easy as possible. But also just to make it like as natural as possible for me. I wasn't like about to like, you know, pick some totally different style and like try and force myself to fit into that niche, just because the thing is that like I see other styles of art that's so beautiful, and for a long time I felt bad about it, like I wish I could do that, or I wish I could create like that. But I've kind of been able to move past that and realize like this is what works for me, and that's actually so nice because it never feels like a chore. It doesn't feel super difficult. I can sit down and sketch something and make a piece of art in a couple hours. And so I really just tried to lean into what my natural tendencies were.
That's so beautiful. Do you feel like the proof and like the evidence that it worked helped to like relieve that anxiety? Like you were like, oh, people like this. Oh, okay. I'm doing something right. Or were there other things like mindset that really helped you to lean into it?
No, I mean, I kind of felt like I was just throwing stuff out there until I started getting feedback and started getting people interested and willing to pay money for it. It's really hard to know. Like you can be making the most beautiful art in the world, but if no one's responding to it, it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, it doesn't really mean that much to you if you're trying to make money from it. But I think for me too, like choosing colors that really resonate with me. Like a lot of times when like a lot of people in my group will ask me to look at their portfolio and they're just starting out, and like the main feedback I kind of always have is like the colors, like just like try and pick colors that are a little bit more unique or bold or not so what you would see anywhere else. And so that was the other part of it, is I really wanted to choose colors. I don't use the same colors in every piece, but I do use a couple colors consistently throughout all my artwork, which works really well because I don't always create in collections, but a lot of my artwork seems like it can be put together and my clients will piece it together because there is always like some overlap in color. And so that's been another thing where I was like, let's just pick some colors and try and reuse them as much as possible. And that has also worked really well.
It's amazing.
It's such a great example in authenticity and how much that pays off. And it's so difficult sometimes just to figure out how to be your authentic self. But I loved your example of like literally somebody says draw a dog and you don't get to overthink it. Just try and draw a dog and see like there's the building blocks right there. And, you know, it's really not about manufacturing something. It's about uncovering it. And you've done that so well. It's such a great example of that.
Okay. So right now, well, first of all, I realized that that's what I had done. So I recently did a piece of work and Katie was like, this is my favorite thing you've made. And it felt like getting back to those roots. Like it felt like there was no client brief. There was no like specific client for licensing. It was just like an itch and it felt so good. And obviously we were talking about this before we jumped on, is like, it's been a bit of a wild month and we haven't made as much art as we're hoping to, but it scratched the itch. And I'm really excited to get back to like expanding that. And so it was really great and validating to have Katie say like, I think this is my favorite thing you've made. But it was my natural tendency. It's like, it started with a little flower and that's the flower I would draw as like a doodle if I was bored. But I think the other thing that you said was like picking things that feel true to you and leaning into that. And right now you're sipping out of a mug that is your artwork.
I am.
like this is the authenticity. And you have a poster of your work behind you, framed piece.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to find that balance between making things that you love creating and that you would also in the licensing world like purchase yourself, because the work that I've booked for licensing has typically been like kind of juvenile and like playful and more for kids. So it's not necessarily something I would buy. And my daughter's 4 and like has her own taste. But I've noticed that like maybe I can lean into that and like create things for my daughter or with her in mind. And I think in the licensing world, finding that balance is interesting, especially for people who are like a little more simple in their like home decor taste. And then you're making art that's like really vibrant. And so it's not always going to be a mashup where like you would buy everything that you make. But I think it's really awesome and something to strive for if you can find that where you're like, yeah, of course I would buy this. I made it because I would put it on my walls. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Your client doesn't always have to be you. It often tends to, it just helps so much. And it helps you with not burning out, especially because it's not like you're trying to force something to come out of you for another client or another person. It's like, I want to make this for myself because I want to make it. And it's so much easier to keep producing things when that's where you're coming from.
Everything just comes more naturally that way when you're like making it for yourself. Like that's, I think the line is when we start to monetize our work and then we naturally have to think about like, what's a client going to say or what's the audience going to say? And then we like shift a little bit and sometimes we just shift a little too much. And so finding that kind of happy medium. Okay. So can we talk a little bit about what your business looks like now? Because you have an agent, you are licensing. I mean, you're literally in Home Goods, TJ Maxx, Marshalls several times a month, not only for yourself, but also because your work is like just covering the shelves there. So I'd love to know, like, this is your full-time gig now and you have 4 kids at home.
Yeah, so it is my full-time gig, but I also don't work full-time. I work like, I would say 20-ish hours a week. Now, if I have like a huge project or something, that definitely will shift. And I definitely some weeks work more or work less. So I add all of my work to my licensing portfolio, but I have about 50% of my clients are not through my agent. They're like much smaller brands, like a lot of like children's clothing brands and some women's clothing, apparel, stuff like that. And then 50% of my business is the bigger clients through my agent, Jewel, who I love. They're amazing. And so, I really try and split my time between doing client work and making art that I want to make, which is really hard because it's like kind of the last thing on the list is like, if I have a deadline, I have to get that done first. But I've been really pushing myself to try and just make fun art because a lot of times that's the art that ends up like everyone's like, oh, we love this. Like, let's do like, so, and that's
it's
also
like palpable that you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah.
Everybody else picks up on that.
It's also hard to like motivate myself to like work on like, client project or something, after my kids go to bed and I'm tired, where it's like, that's the time that I get to make the fun art. Then I'm like, okay, like this is my chance. I'm going to push through and like do whatever I need to do and, get a few more hours in.
That was me like 10 years ago. Now I'm like, it's 8:00. I better go to bed. My bedtime. I want to follow up. I know you have more to say on that, but no, keep going. I'm going to come back. I'm going to keep that going in my noggin.
That was like pretty much it. So so it's, making some new art for myself, making some new art based on client requests, either through my personal clients, through my clients, through my agency. And then, I have some time where I'm trying to market my stuff a little bit. I mostly just focus on Instagram and Pinterest in terms of sharing my art. And that's it. I try and keep it pretty simple. And then like I have started building a course. So that's like one more little section of my time is like I try and carve out some time every week to work on that. And so,
That's amazing. Amazing. I want to talk about agency a little bit and being represented because we actually have a call with Jewel inside our licensing blueprint. Mm-hmm. So when you sign up, you can hear an interview that we did with Carol, who works there. And she talks about what she's looking for in an artist, how to like have your portfolio really stand out. And Carol is amazing. And Jewel was my agency as well. So we have really good things to say about them. So many people ask us like, okay, I want to do licensing. I need to get an agent. And you've already said you work part-time. You have 4 kids. I think I've said you have 4 kids like 20 times already because it's just so impressive. And that you've put boundaries on how much you work so that you can show up for your kids.
Yeah.
And so Katie and I have always kind of fallen to this like middle of the ground. Agents are great, but they're not for everyone. And so I guess, when did you know that it was time to get an agent, and maybe like what you looked for or
Yeah.
why you felt it was, when was it time? And like,
Um,
what's your experience been?
Yeah, so it was time when I found out that I was pregnant with twins and I already
Yeah,
had two kids and I was like,
that'll do
"Oh
it.
my God." So, yeah. And it's funny because I didn't need an agent. Like I actually went into my relationship with my agent with a ton of clients
Right.
that they already had, and like we just kind of moved those relationships over. But one, I just didn't have it in me to
Read contracts.
manage all of the license. Like I cannot, there's just to keep track of the licenses in itself is like would be like a full-time job for me that
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. So that to me is like the biggest part. It was just like making sure there was no mess ups, no overlaps. They kept everything straight. That's really huge. That being said, they've brought me so many more opportunities than I would have probably ever come through, especially with like the larger manufacturing brands that aren't even necessarily something on most people's radars because they just kind of exist in this larger realm of like people who are licensing art that's not even something we would come across. So I'm really, really happy that I have the agency, but I am in complete agreement that not everyone needs it. And there's also lots of different types of agents and lots of different types of agencies that work different ways. I was really looking for a partner that wasn't going to put any kind of like quotas on me of like, you need to make X amount
For
every
sure.
month. Cause I was like, it's not going to happen. It might or it might not, but I really needed someone who's just going to be like, basically like my ally and just kind of like pitching for me and working for me, but not putting additional work and pressure on me, which is exactly how the relationship is. It's really wonderful and I'm really happy.
Yeah. I think that's great. And like I said, Carol was my agent and I had a really, really great experience. And I definitely think looking out for people who are going to give you quotas for me was a red flag for sure, because like life happens. And I think
Yeah.
it's good because you do need to be creating new art. And the only reason I did leave my agency was because I wasn't making new art. I could not make the time for it.
Yeah.
With the work we're doing at Good Type.
Yes.
And so it was made no sense to waste their time when I couldn't deliver. However, the pressure of the quota, like some months you're going to make 20 pieces and some months you're going to make 3. And so for me, that was something to look out for. For other people, that might be like the kick in the ass that they
Exactly.
need.
And for some people,
Yeah,
that could be
for
perfect.
sure.
I
Totally.
come from an agency where there was a quota. And for me, it was definitely a scary pressure that I ended up not being able to meet. But I was at the beginning of my licensing journey, and I understand why they wanted that from me because they were trying to help me strategically build my portfolio.
Right.
Whereas if you're coming in and you're already super prolific and you have this big portfolio, or at least robust enough for them to go out and be able to sell just off of what you have already, I think that's like a totally different scenario that you come in. So I think having kind of a what's best for me idea in your head, if you are gonna have some conversations with agents and see if an agency might be the right fit for you, I think thinking of those two camps and like which would work for me is a good first question to kind of go in with.
Yeah. And like you
I
said,
just
you
want to
already
say
came with so many. Go for it.
I just wanted to add one thing, which I think is super important, which is that, especially if you're just starting out, like you might not get a yes right away. I did not get a yes right away from Jewel, and I didn't give up. I just went back a few months later and added more stuff. And I think that that's really important because I felt really strongly that they were the right agency for me. And I had actually gotten other offers from other agencies that I passed on. And I just kept like, and I feel like that's been the way also with like potential clients. Like I
I
have
was
some
gonna
clients that
say,
I
yeah.
really wanted and they didn't respond or said not right now, but like you have to just have like the courage and just keep asking unless someone's literally like stop. But yeah, so I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. That's super helpful for us to hear and hear your real experience with getting a no that turned into a yes later on, because a lot of times we're like, door closed, okay, bye. And it's really not closed. It's ajar.
Yeah, it's ajar. The same thing actually happened to me, and I just remembered. I had applied to Jewel when I first started because I believed that I was supposed to get an agent. Like I thought that's how you booked the jobs. And then they were super sweet and said like, or thanks for submitting or whatever. And then I think they reached out to me and said, we've seen your work and we'd like to represent you. And I was like, is this real life? Yeah, and like still have such a great relationship with them. And yeah, I think that's a really good mindset and a good reminder. And like you said, you came in with a lot of clients you already had. And I'd love to differentiate. You talked about how you have clients that you do like 50-50 is like some are with Jewel and some are on your own. When you're doing things on your own, are you also licensing, or are those more commission based where like someone is hiring you for an exclusive design, or is it a mixed bag?
It's a mixed bag. The real differentiation is actually like a lot of the smaller brands I work with do flat fee licensing. So if anything is royalty, I pass it off to Jewel. And I actually always have a conversation with them because sometimes I get a potential client and it's like they're offering me X and Jewel's like, well, we think we could maybe get them to convert to royalty or something. So I always like check with them anyway. But if it's a smaller brand or just like usually a flat fee, I do very little like buyouts or exclusivity anymore. But yeah, the flat fee is typically what I kind of just keep and do on my own. And then anything royalty is what Jewel takes over.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you can put a hard pass on this, but I'd love to talk about finances for a second because I've seen you share one thing and I think there's like I don't know, just like we just don't share enough about it, I think is part of it. And I think people assume, which is funny because it feels like a broken record that we say like licensing is not an overnight moneymaker. And it's actually a really slow game because of the way that royalties are paid out. And I'm still getting paid royalties from projects I did like 2 years ago because the royalty is like, you know, probably ending. And so they're getting things off the shelves. And so I think people don't realize the like amount of volume. Do you know how many pieces are in your portfolio?
Just about 1,000.
So I have about 500 and Katie always was like, how? And Katie,
you made 1,000 pieces in like 4 years?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I just had a call with Carol and she was like, yeah, there's like 1,000 pieces in your portfolio. I was like,
yeah,
that makes me want to like, I don't know, dance and throw up at the same time. I'm so that's amazing. How do you do
I don't
it?
think people don't realize the like volume, and it's not to say that you should just like create all day every day and like never do anything else, but you've decided this is the basket and you're putting your eggs into it. And you've also put like really great limits. That's the experiment that we're getting to, but I want to first talk about how to make it, making ends meet. So like what's realistic?
Is that I try to be really strategic about it. Like if I'm going to make a pattern, say a dog pattern, because like so much of what I do is dogs.
Yeah. You have 1,000 dogs in your portfolio.
Pretty much. But like what I will do is like, you know, I'm making all the separate pattern motifs, but I also will, you know, consider like, can I add some text to these and make each of these dogs its own standalone placement piece and then also put them into a pattern. So I try to be really strategic so that maybe I'm, you know, making a pattern for a client with, you know, I'm making Christmas dogs or something, but I'm also able to make 6 or 8 pieces from that because I break it apart. And a lot of times like it all gets licensed or a lot of it will get licensed because different clients need different things. So being strategic is also why there's so much art in there.
That's amazing. So something that Katie and I were taught, and we come from the lettering world. So like we are almost like one step removed from surface design because just like we don't do a lot of pattern work. I do some, but not much. And I guess maybe this was told to us once and we just like clung on to it, but that you just have to be really careful if you're using one like group of images and you're using it on a pattern and on like a spot graphic.
Yes.
But you have an agent so they can keep track of that for you.
So exactly. That's a huge thing. Like if I license a greeting card that has art on it, they will tag all of those images in my portfolio, even the standalone ones to that client so that they know this could get licensed out for something else, but not for another greeting card. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that I don't want to have to track.
Yeah, no, it's basically impossible.
Yeah.
But yeah, an agent can help do that. I mean, you can do it too. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it also could potentially lead to the client saying, oh, well, if these are all tagged to us anyway, then we might as well use them. So let's add 10 more products. So
I have a really big collection coming out this holiday. And I feel like that's exactly what happened. It's a cowboy Santa that I made a pattern, but I also made some standalone pieces and it got picked up for a huge like 30-piece home collection.
That's insane.
Because they could see it. And you know, sometimes people just need to see it in front of them. Like they can't necessarily envision like something, what it could be. But if you put as much as you can in front of them, that usually helps.
Because it's like, it's cheaper to buy the box set.
What would you say like percentage wise you have spot graphics versus patterns in your portfolio?
It's definitely probably more pattern heavy, but I wouldn't say by maybe like 60% patterns.
Okay.
Because like a lot of my patterns I'll do in multiple colorways too, which you have to remember. Usually I only will add like 2 colorways of a pattern, maybe 3. I try not to go crazy. I would say it's probably 65% patterns and then 35 placement spot, that kind of.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's another really interesting one is because, you know, we do a lot of portfolios portfolio reviews within our course, the art licensing blueprint. And I'm saying it because we never talk about it. So I'm intentionally saying what it's called in case people are like, these ladies have a course. But often people will be like, oh, which colorway do you like? You know, how many colorways should I include? And we're always like, pick your favorite and include it. But I love that you're like, I just put in a bunch of colorways. Like,
oh yeah.
I think that's great. I've never thought to do it that way because I've just always like had to submit. I guess I've never made that many collections where I'm
well,
like,
and this is, you're showing those after they're already like interested in looking through your collection, right? It's not like the first time they're glancing at your portfolio and you're hitting them with like all the colorways you have, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I think there's
Gotcha.
a big differentiation. And this is something I also talk to like in my Facebook group of like, if someone is just like, you're pitching someone and you're sending them your portfolio, you don't want to be sending them exactly the 1,000 images. You're sending them like a 12 images, like best work situation.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a client who is like pulling work to share with their client and want to see all the options kind of situation. Yeah. Exactly.
Love that.
But yeah, what I typically do is like a lot of times I like colors that are not the most traditional. So a lot of times I'll do the colorway that I love that's like maybe a little crazy and out there. And then I'll try and do like a version that's like a little bit more like mainstream.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
And you're just like pushing the cool one just slightly closer to them. You're like, I don't know. This one just landed right in front of your face. I don't know what happened. Yeah, the colors are always an interesting thing. I always really want them to go a little bit further out there, but some of the buyers are just, they want the more conservative thing. They want the classics. They want the things that they know will sell. So there's some brands that are like willing to push it and some brands that aren't, for sure.
That's totally, yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so can we circle back to talking about finances, because I think that people have no idea what to expect. Yeah, let's talk about money for a second. So Katie and I just did an episode where we talked about how together, collectively, we have a business, Good Type. We have courses, but we want to make 100K just from our art. And it's something that's like such a buzzword, I feel like. I think it's possible with licensing. I think you're an example of it. We've always said that 20K seems like a really good area, a good number to reach for if you're making work in the licensing world, but it's not your full-time job. And to like strive for after you've made like enough pieces. Like you can't do that with 12 pieces probably, but maybe if you have 200 or 300 you could. And so if you anything you want to share about finances and like what surprised you or
so my goal, like 2023 was the first year where I was really like, okay, like I can make like money for real. I had signed with Jewel in December of 2022, so it was like my first year like with an agent and taking this like super seriously. And my goal was like, I think I wanted to make 50K. That was my goal. And it felt a little bit like a stretch because I wasn't exactly sure how much I was going to be able to work. And to be clear, like this is licensing, but also I do like a bit of freelance work for like a few clients. So I'm kind of including that in my income, but I totally blew through the 50K in the first, I would say like 4 months. Yeah. I had like 2 months where I made like, almost 30K just in 1 month. And that's because I worked really hard. Like I kind of burned out sometimes. It's funny because I was like talking to my husband and I was like, I just want you to know, like, I don't know that I'm going to make as much money this year as I did last year because I don't know I'm willing to like push quite that hard. But I also have other things that I want to kind of work on. That all being said, it's actually really interesting because I ended up making well over 6 figures last year. And a lot of the licensing deals that I've done with my agency are just now starting to come in terms of like income. So that was mostly just like a lot of the clients I work directly with. Not even all my licensing deals. And like you were saying, like each quarter as I get paid out from Jewel, that number just keeps going up because it's like these things just keep adding on and layering on. So it definitely is a bit of a time game. Like it's not necessarily something you can just like hop right into and then like expect to make like a certain number unless you are like, mixing in like you have certain freelance clients or something else or just part-time. But if you're willing to kind of like play the long game, you can definitely continue to build up so that you do have a nice monthly income from licensing and royalties. You just have to be a little bit patient.
I mean, should we do like a round of applause?
A round for the Santa Claus, the cowboy Santa Claus.
You know what? It's just been rough. It's been rough. Should we do a round of applause for you or like a standing ovation or something?
No, it's super impressive. You've popped off and you've worked freaking hard for it too.
But I think the most impressive part is that you've remained like your core you've had boundaries, you've remained
Yeah.
optimistic, remained excited, you've had fun.
Yeah.
And
Like
you've
if it's
helped
not,
other people along the
yeah,
way.
I think that's incredible.
Trying to.
So yeah,
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
to raise the bar.
I think it's important
Yeah.
for people to like not undervalue themselves. And that's harder to do when you're just starting out. But as you start getting traction, you have to like have the ability to charge enough money too. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, because the reality of the licensing world is the people who have success stories like yours are fewer and further between. And I think a lot of people come in with the expectation that it's going to completely explode and just jive with everybody immediately. And
Yeah.
it doesn't. And then they get frustrated and they give up before they've tweaked anything or tried anything else. So I'm curious if you have any advice for somebody who's like in a situation like that, and maybe based on feedback that you've gotten from clients about what they think works so well about your work that has made you so successful.
Yes. So first I'll just start with like when I started this, the only commitment I made myself commit to was that I would not give up. Like I knew I was going to make crappy art. I knew I would get frustrated and I knew I'd want to stop and not do it anymore. And I was like, the only thing I'm going to commit to was like for the next year to not give up on this and just keep doing it. And that was like, to hold myself to that was really important. And it's just, yes, because it can get super frustrating. In terms of like people responding to my art, I learned in my past business, like as much as possible, like get your stuff out there so you can start getting feedback. It's one of the reasons why I have an Etsy shop where I just sell like printable, like some of my art is like printable downloads. And one of the reasons I like to do that is because it helps me like see really quickly, like, oh, this one piece, like tons of people are buying this for their nursery, or this one thing, like lots of people are wanting to buy this, or this phone background or whatever it is. And then I'm also putting it out there on Instagram and putting it out there on Pinterest. And so I think if you're able to just like get past the like fear of putting your stuff out there and put it out there as much as possible, any feedback you get is really important to try and understand, like, why is this doing so well on Instagram? Why is this doing so well on Pinterest? Is it the colors? Is it the subject matter? And trying to incorporate that in. Obviously, if you're pitching to clients as well, if there's certain pieces they're resonating with, but I feel like that comes a little bit later down the road. So just like finding any outlets you can to get feedback, I think is like the quickest way to kind of figure that out.
Have any of your clients said like, hey, take it off Etsy because we want it? Like,
yeah, I have these two really cute little poodle things that I was selling, and then they got licensed to Hobby Lobby. So yeah.
I mean, so I think you just do it and then you you just shift gears later on, because people ask us that all the time.
Yes,
like,
exactly. So
I have an issue.
Yeah, so the only downloads I do on Etsy really are like printable wall art. But if a client obviously is going to license it, then I take it off. Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Katie, what were you going to ask?
I was just going to ask, is that feedback kind of format that you're talking about how you ended up focusing more on things like dogs and like your more signature interesting color palettes, or were those always things that you were like, I want this to be in the absolute forefront?
So I've always loved dogs, and it was like an easy thing for me to just draw when I first started out. But I will just tell you that I cannot draw enough dogs. Every dog pattern I add to my portfolio like immediately gets requested. So a lot of it is a big response. So many clients request specific pets. It's not just dogs, actually. A lot of times I'll make a dog pattern and they're like, can you please make the cat pattern? Like I do that all the time actually now.
What's the next trending animal? Because we joke about like what it could be. Like we're like, it's gerbils wearing top hats.
About axolotls lately. Okay?
So much.
That axolotl song on TikTok, it's constantly in my head.
Okay. Axolotls, that's a good one. Yeah, you know what? I don't know.
Turtles, maybe? I don't know. We'll find out.
I don't even know. I'm just like so focused on drawing cats and dogs. I'm kind of just not even.
Yeah, she's enjoying it. Yeah. You haven't burnt out yet.
There's never enough dogs. I mean, I love dogs, and we always laugh at whenever we talk about like the pet industry or like the within licensing, like the category for pet, I don't know, pet accessories.
Yeah.
It's so big. Like if you go to Marshall's, it takes up a big chunk. Like it's a whole aisle. Like there's beds, there's collars, there's bandanas, there's so much for dogs. And then there's the stuff for dog lovers.
Well, and that's even bigger. Like, yeah.
I mean, it's a huge market. It's not so niche. Yeah. Like it is a big market. No.
What's your biggest market, Krissy? Like where are you selling the most art?
I would say like stationary gift. I do like a ton of like notebooks, napkins, paper cups, truly the stuff you see at TJ Maxx and Marshalls and Home Goods. Like Alana and I were talking this earlier, but so much of my work is in there. And I think it's because I'm in that perfect niche of those products. stationary gift wrap, gift bags. That's like definitely the biggest chunk of
your
my
jam.
client.
Have you run out of space for housing all your samples?
Yes. I'm like, yes, like it has taken over my whole office. I'm in the basement right now, like in our guest room, and this also is like full of stuff. Like I literally have like 100 blankets. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, that's the asterisk we need to put on anybody getting into art licensing is like prepare to have all of your storage overtaken by beautiful, wonderful things, but woof, it's a lot.
I brought my bin up yesterday and it was so heavy because there's like 8 travel mugs in there and I don't know. And I always like to keep at least one. Like usually
I
I
have the same
gift the
thing.
samples, but I want to keep one. And I'm like, I could just photograph it or I could like take them out of the display packaging and like use it.
Yeah.
But I can't do it.
I'm never gonna be without a card ever for the rest of my life.
Same. We both primarily do greeting cards.
Yeah.
There's just so many. So if you ever need greeting cards, you know where to find us. Anyway, I want to sort of wrap up by talking about the experiment. So Katie and I are on this journey to kind of just make more art and kind of find the joy in our work. And that's not to say we haven't loved everything we've done at Good Type. It's just that we've let creating art be on the back burner. And so this whole year we're focusing on these experiments. And we asked you before you came on the episode, what would your experiment be? And just to keep that in mind, I'm going to share something that you said in your email, if that's okay, because it actually kind of sums up our conversation perfectly, but also just such a nice little button. What if I worked less and had more fun? How did you like give yourself permission coming from this like $1 million business that you had before? How did you embrace that? Because I think that's all everyone wants is to work less and have more fun, but you're actually doing it.
Yeah, it was like, after, like I said, like last year was like just full tilt, like trying to grind and, every client that I could do the work, I would take on the work. And it was just a lot. And I found myself so often like spending all my work hours working on not art that I didn't want to make, but art that wasn't like my art or art that I felt super excited about. And it just made me feel burned out. And it made me feel like if I keep doing this, it's not going to be sustainable. And so I just kind of took a step back and I was like, for the next year, for 2025, I'm just going to only take on clients where I'm excited about the client, our values align, and I want to do the work. By cutting out some of the additional kind of client work, I'm going to allow myself a little bit more time to, do the work, do the art that I want to, but also not work. And like, I try and be with my kids every day, like from when they get home from school until bedtime. And I'm just trying to like allow myself to be a little bit more just like free flowing throughout my day. And if I want to go to Home Goods and look at my stuff, or if I want to go get coffee and get my nails done, like I'm going to let myself do it.
In the aisle.
Yeah, you just go in the aisles and you say, I'm so proud of you, babe. I'm so proud of you. Good job. Your art, you're really good. I love that. Next time I go, I will also be in the aisles and just cheering you on. So can you report back that you are in fact happier and having more fun?
So yes, it's been a great year so far in terms of like, I have some incredible new clients. I've been making art that I'm excited about. I don't feel any less productive. If anything, I feel more productive because I feel more excited when I do sit down to work. So yeah, it's been great. I have no complaints. I highly suggest.
I love that. I think, Katie, do you have any follow-up questions?
I was just going to say, I think that the main fear that people have that keeps them from doing what you're doing, which is the goal, the dreams, is the fear of the finances dropping off. But I think part of the cool thing that you've discovered and that other people have discovered when you do pull back and focus on the things that bring you joy is that the more focus you put in that area and the more like you feel good in your life, the more that energy is just like circulating around. And so it does seem like obviously not everybody's going to have the same outcome, but it really is about like the joy of life. And when that is in the room with you, some cool stuff really does happen.
I love that. I feel like that's a good button to end on. I was going to ask follow-up questions, but they seem silly now. And I think this was perfect. Aww. Do you want to do just a quick plug for where people can follow you and find you? We already said your Facebook group. We'll put it in the show notes as well. But where can they follow your work?
Yeah, my website's just krissymast.com. And on there you can see, like I said, link to my Facebook group. There's like some art licensing kind of resource freebies on there. You can find my Instagram on there as well, which is Krissy Krissy_Mast_art. I had to think about it.
Like, let me think about that.
Yeah. And those are kind of like my main spaces. Like I try and keep it simple. And yeah, so anyone and everyone, even if you aren't a surface pattern designer, but you want to be one, or you're just making art, the Facebook group is awesome because there's just so much information that you might feel like you don't know how to even find. So it's a great place to just like get started and start feeling comfortable about what you might want to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, this was such a pleasure. I can't wait to go on my next Marshalls trip.
Everybody keep your eyes out for Krissy's art all over everything, everywhere, forevermore.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well,
keep having
this was
fun.
a great episode. Yeah, have fun. All good things.